Anyway, welcome to the studio, Shehzan. Hopefully he is here. How you doing?
Hey, can you hear me?
There he is.
Yes, we can.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Kick us off with an introduction to Lava, and then I definitely want to know about the announcement that just went down.
So Lava is the most secure way to borrow against Bitcoin.
Hmm.
So a lot of Bitcoiners, they believe that Bitcoin is the greatest appreciating asset of all time, which,
Hmm.
historically it has been.
Yeah.
And if you can avoid selling your Bitcoin, why wouldn't you? And historically, if you wanted to borrow against your Bitcoin, you had to use a custodial platform. So give full ownership of your Bitcoin to someone else and kind of
Sure.
trust them with it. And we all know kind of what happened with these custodial platforms like
Hmm.
FTX or BlockFi or Celsius or Voyager. They took your Bitcoin, they'd start trading it or rehypothecating it.
Hmm.
And ultimately, over the last few years, these custodial platforms have lost around $100 billion in customer funds. Uh,
That's so
yeah,
much money. Ooh. Ooh. We don't like losing money.
Not good. Not good.
not
That's
good,
insane.
not good
Okay.
at all.
So
Not good.
what's the solution?
So Lava, what we've done is we've embedded the logic for a loan into a
Yep.
Bitcoin smart contract, which basically means that when you borrow against your Bitcoin on Lava, you can verify on chain, like you can
Yep.
go to a block explorer, for example, and see that your Bitcoin is safe and secure, that it's not being rehypothecated. And you have cryptographic guarantees,
Sure.
not just legal or reputational assurances from Lava that your collateral is safe. So that's why it's the most secure way to borrow against your Bitcoin. And not only that, Lava has the lowest rates on the market, even
Hmm.
lower than custodial platforms by 20 to 30%. Um, and we can fund loans of any size.
You said Bitcoin smart contract. I thought that was an Ethereum thing. How is this working? Is this new technology? Is this something that wasn't possible previously? Because the basic pitch seems like we should have been doing this all along. So
Yes. Yeah.
what needed to happen to get us to today?
It's kind of surprising to me because Bitcoin always had like scripting.
Mm,
Bitcoin's always had like programmability. It's not just like moving money from one
sure.
address to the other. Lava's kind of leveraged certain like core Bitcoin primitives to kind
Hmm.
of take that and use what primitives Bitcoin has available and create this like loan contract. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah.
Bitcoin's not like Turing complete. So what you can't do is like you can't do all sorts of things that you would want to that you could do in Ethereum on Bitcoin, but you can do certain very important things.
Hmm.
And one of those is non-custodial borrowing. And
Yep.
honestly, if you look at the rest of crypto, I think the majority of like the main use case of DeFi really is, in my opinion, being able to borrow against an
Yeah.
asset and see that it's safe and secure.
Now, I imagine that it's pretty expensive. That's the whole narrative. Maybe that's not true, but it feels like if I want to borrow 50 cents
Yeah.
against my Bitcoin, probably not going to have a good time. Is that roughly correct? Like, where does it start to make sense? Taking out $100,000 loan, the
Yeah.
gas might be, or whatever the equivalent is, might be a little bit more reasonable. Is that roughly correct?
The gas fees on Bitcoin are extremely like Bitcoin is like really inexpensive right now. Like
Okay.
fees are like less than $1.
Okay.
But what you could do is like you could lock a bunch of collateral up and
Yep.
over time take out more and more in loans, right? So
Sure.
we have a product in beta right now where you basically can lock your Bitcoin up and get a card. And as you swipe the card, more and more gets borrowed. So kind of like a
Okay.
line of credit, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
And then what was the announcement today?
So today we actually like fully officially announced Lava Loans like out of beta
Okay.
alpha. We announced that we can fund loans of any size from $100 to $1 billion just based on the capital that
A
we've
$1 billion loan?
yes.
That's so insane.
And
Uh,
we've already made loans like millions of dollars and like single loans that have been worth like $5 million already,
wow.
which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And we announced that our rates are like 20 to 30% lower than the next best rate on the market.
Hmm. And then walk me through all the different counterparties, who's getting paid. Obviously, as a consumer, I have a Bitcoin. I want to take a loan against it. At some point, I'm probably getting stable coins out, but then who's on the other side of that contract? Or how much money are they making? How much money are you making?
So there's a bunch of different lenders on the other side that Lava works with to
Hmm.
facilitate these loans. So as a borrower, the way it works is you download Lava, you put your
Hmm.
Bitcoin on there.
Hmm.
It's all self-custodial. You say, okay, I want to borrow $10,000 for 1 year. And
Hmm.
then your Bitcoin gets moved from one address to this like smart contract address.
Hmm.
And when that happens, you get stable coins directly to your Lava app. That's all abstracted away from you. For us in Lava, we leverage stable coins because they enable us to do instant dispersal of loan capital,
Yep.
but it's just seen as dollars. Like you just see like dollars coming into your Lava app. And you can even use Lava to withdraw those dollars to your bank account.
Sure.
Within Lava, you also have global free instant dollar payments. So kind of like what Cash App, Venmo style payments, you have that within the app for free as well. You don't have to worry about any of like the blockchain complexity. We abstract away all the blockchain stuff, the gas fee stuff, the
Yep.
stablecoin stuff. And you can even use a card that we could issue to you to start spending those dollars that you've borrowed.
That's cool. And then what drives the interest rate? Is that just driven by Bitcoin volatility, or is there some sort of like underwriting of the individual? Because I imagine it doesn't necessarily need to know anything about me other than the fact that like the Bitcoin is in the wallet and that's it.
Yep, exactly. There's no like underwriting of the individual.
So everyone gets the same interest rate.
Yep. Yeah.
Wow.
Exactly.
And how are the interest rates calculated? Where are they sitting right now? Where they've been historically, and how do the lenders like think about that risk?
But today, if you borrow, you can get a loan from 5% for a 1 month loan up to 9.99% for a 12-month loan. And that's really like the sweet spot in duration that people want. People can like refinance, like extend their loans later if they want to.
Yeah.
And like Lava earns like a little bit of a spread, and the rest is kind of sent to the lender, essentially, like the rest of the interest payments. Historically, the I think over time the rates will just come down. I mean, they're always going to be somewhat variable to whatever like the treasury rates are, right?
Yep.
Because you're going to want some premium over that. But I think long term, the rate for a Bitcoin backed loan should trend towards the rate for borrowing against equities. And in fact, like borrowing against like lending against Bitcoin is a lot less risky than lending against equities because it trades 24/7.
Sure.
So it's way more liquid. It will over time, it is already more liquid than most like stocks, like individual stocks, right? And as the market cap grows, it will become the most liquid asset in the world. So I think you could even argue today it is that because it trades 24/7.
And is there some sort of like reserve ratio where if you have 10 Bitcoin, you can borrow X amount against that, or
how does
volatility work here? Because I imagine if you borrow against all of your, at some point they're going to take your Bitcoin, right? Like, but what triggers that?
So when you borrow, there's like an LTV, right? So kind of like if you borrow against your equities, you can maybe get 50% against the value that you collateralize, which is similar to how Lava works. And there's flexible LTV. So maybe if you want to be very conservative, you might only want to borrow 20% against the collateral that you put up.
Yep.
And then every loan has a price, a liquidation price, where if Bitcoin gets there and you haven't repaid your loan or added more collateral, there will be a liquidation. But you can kind of verify that. Lava sends you notifications all the time to make sure you're aware if you're getting close to that liquidation price.
Yep. That makes sense. Jordy, any other questions?
No, very cool.
This is fantastic.
I think a lot of our listeners are going to go lever up and use it to buy fine Swiss
watches.
watches.
I guess my last question is there's this weird dynamic in crypto right now where there are some seriously scaled founder mode companies in the space that have huge distribution advantages that can offer competitive products. And then there's kind of this history of when something's working, it gets forked and open sourced, and there's a lot of competition there. How are you thinking about the competitive landscape as it evolves over the next couple of years if you're really successful?
It's interesting. I actually think there's no company in crypto today. Like I very much view Bitcoin as being very distinct from crypto. I think a lot of the companies in crypto today are serving this like trading speculation use case, whereas Lava is really serving this Bitcoin saver use case. Like there's these Bitcoiners out there, they don't touch any asset in crypto other than Bitcoin. They just want to save in it. And what we're really building our like North Star is whatever Fidelity kind of offers equity asset holders, we want to offer Bitcoin asset holders. So there's people out there that we're serving that have basically replaced their savings portfolio that's, with equities or real estate with just Bitcoin. And they don't really have a trusted brand that they can go to that they feel is secure, that they can rely on to borrow against their Bitcoin, to start spending dollars to buy more Bitcoin. And that's really where Lava is headed to.
Is that a common use case? People take a Lava loan and then just buy more Bitcoin?
So It's not like the most common use case. We've had people borrow against their Bitcoin to buy houses, which is
Sure.
pretty interesting, buy
Yeah, makes
cars,
sense.
pay their taxes,
Yep.
like fund like vacations. But there are some people who will borrow to buy more Bitcoin. But what's like more interesting is a lot of people come to Lava, they borrow against their Bitcoin, but then they like stay to do the other things that they were already doing, like do like dollar payments, or when they do want to buy more Bitcoin later, they can actually use Lava to do that as well.
That makes a ton of sense. Well, good luck. Thank you so much for hopping on. This is great. We'll talk to you soon.
Congrats on the launch.
Yeah.
Cheers.